interesting documentary.
Hey, welcome back to Midas Letter Live. My guest this segment is Jay Wilger. He's the CEO of Newstrike, trading on the TSX Venture under the symbol HIP. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, James.
Jay, Newstrike has had an amazing run through the markets, almost married to Canamed. Aurora steps in, steals the wife. Newstrike's out in the wind, giant treasury, pivot, tilt, move, regroup. Tell me what's going on with Newstrike now.
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for having it. It has been a fascinating year for us, as you can imagine. You know, we started off trading as a public company last year. Certainly after we announced our partnership, business partnership with the Tragically Hip, which was very exciting in itself. And then very quickly we started looking at the potential transaction with Canamed, and really at the time made a lot of sense for us as a combination. Canamed, of course, being one of the most established cannabis companies in Canada.
Right.
And us with a very brand-focused go-to-market strategy, really in the recreational market. And you know, I certainly wasn't expecting to get thrown in the middle of a hostile takeover situation 6 months in, and but that being said, you know, I think we actually came through that in a much stronger way than I think the market thought we would. You know, we got a break fee that was pretty significant. We had raised $90 million within 3 days of the transaction not happening. And then you may be aware we just raised another $55 million in total. So we're certainly sitting on a very strong balance sheet right now, and our operations are very strong. So we're executing on exactly what we were doing a year ago, just having gone through the turmoil of that situation.
Yeah. Okay. So you've changed the name of the company to Newstrike Brands. Is that?
We have. Yeah.
From that, I'm assuming we can read that you're going to be focused on the consumer packaged brand space in the cannabis space. You acquired a ACMPR grower, if I'm not mistaken.
No, an application.
Oh, okay.
We had acquired.
Late stage application.
That's correct.
Up Cannabis.
Well, so yes. So Newstrike was really the name Newstrike really came about through the RTO transaction that we had done, and hence the name Resources. So the idea of moving it now to Newstrike Brands with Up. Was really about the fact that we are a brand-focused company right now.
Yeah.
We certainly have an eye to international markets. There's no question about that. But what we realized early on was that there are, you know, quite a few players here in the Canadian marketplace. A lot of them really focused on the medical side of things, and if you look at a lot of the names of companies and you know, call it the brands that were out there, we saw a really big opportunity to say, let's create a brand that stands out, that's simple to Canadians, that is catchy, that we can really play around with the branding side of this, understanding, of course, that the regulations that we work within are very controlled, and we get that. So we're working closely with Health Canada on those things, closely with our partners at the Tragically Hip and others, in creating recognizable brands for Canadians in the rec market.
Okay, so then. Is the relationship with the Hip still very much a part of what you're about to do?
It is, yeah. I mean, last week you may have seen we hosted a really interesting event called the New Farm, where the Tragically Hip were present, of course, and they've been a great partner for us from day one. And I always talk about the fact, if you think about people that understand Canada and understand Canadians, you'd be hard pressed to find a group of guys that has spent more time traveling across this country and talking to people and understanding what Canadians are really all about. So when we integrate them into our overall plan, they're very active with us, and they really are. I mean, the idea of that partnership was a business partnership. It was not a promotional type thing, and you know, I think you see that with them on the way we interact with them and work with them. And they're excited about it too. I mean, they talk very openly about their excitement. And, so it's also a lot of fun.
Amazing. So how soon till Up Cannabis is a licensed grower then, do you think?
So we are fully licensed. We have been fully licensed, yeah. So we've been actually growing now for 18 months.
Oh, okay.
And we have two facilities. Our Brantford facility is a relatively small indoor, almost medical style facility that we built starting 5 years ago. And that site has been licensed now since December of 2016. So we've been producing there actually for a year and a half, and most of our production there is actually stockpiled for the recreational market.
Okay.
So unlike most producers, we haven't gone out and created a medical side. We've really said, okay, let's focus our products and our strains on the recreational market. So we've got several thousand kilograms in vaults right now.
Oh.
And then our second facility that we bought in Niagara last July, one of the most high-tech greenhouse facilities in North America. and it used to actually grow orchids. And so we are converting, or we've converted that now into a very large-scale cannabis producing facility that is also licensed. So we have plants in there right now. And at its peak, it will produce around 30,000, depending on the strain, 30 or plus thousand kilograms of cannabis per year.
Wow.
And then within that facility, we also are expanding production capacity for oils and derivative products that we see as being a big part of our market, certainly going forward. You know, when you talk about vape pens or you talk about other edible products, we have a strategy to go very hard at that market as well.
Okay, great. Well, so that's interesting. You're one of the only companies I've ever talked to who said, no, we're not even participating in the medical business, we're going straight to recreational. Does that sort of impact the way you grow, or the strains you grow, or the type, the mix of sort of output you target?
Funny enough, no. I mean, you know, the products that we actually grow, and I think we've taken a different tack than a lot of the licensed producers on a few fronts. So the one thing we don't do, and you know, a lot of companies talk about, well, we've got 35 strains. We look at this and say, okay, that's a confusing number for a consumer. Canadians really actually don't know as much about cannabis as you'd think, and I think even people that have been using it for years are not necessarily that educated on, you know, the multiple types of strains that exist out there. So we looked at it and said, okay, what strains are selling in North America really well? And the difference between a medicinal strain and a non-medicinal strain, when you grow it at the level we're required to grow it at, which is Health Canada standard, which is very, very high, there's really no difference. I mean, we could sell our current products as medicinal products. We have, you know, one strain that is a very, very high THC strain that would be a perfect medicinal product. And we also grow one that is very, very high in CBD, which is generally considered the more medicinal of the two.
Right.
And so no, our 5 strains that we're really focused on could be used for either, but we also decided just focus on 5. And you think about a beer company, it'd be unusual if you had a beer company that had 45 different beers to choose from.
Right.
And so the view for us is from the get-go, let's go to the market with things that resonate with consumers and that they can understand, and keep it a little bit simple.
Okay.
So that's really been the strategy.
Wow. So, I mean, the one thing that's always impressed me about Newstrike is you guys are able to raise capital in the face of what would otherwise, for other companies, would be a game wrecker, never mind changer. And so, you know, every bad thing that happens to you, just turn around and raise more money. So to me, that's like, well, there's the example of how a late stage entrant into the game can survive. If you've got access to capital, you can pivot and turn and regroup and rebrand many times. And so,
well, and to that point, you know, when you look at the fact we've got our 2 sites which we own, we've got over $120 million in cash in the bank. We've got significant inventory, several thousand kilograms that we're now looking to get into the recreational market. So I think we're actually extremely well positioned. And you know, certainly the question I know that people always ask is, well, what's going on with your stock price? What's going on with this? Our focus is really executing on this business plan, and I think when you look at the fundamentals that we're building within Newstrike, I think they remain extremely strong. To your point, you know, we are pretty tight, but we are also capable of pivoting very quickly, and have the ability to do so, certainly financially.
Right. So it's game on for you guys essentially on October 17th. You've got to deal with Alberta.
We do.
And I'm assuming that you're working on deals with other outlets and strategies.
We certainly are, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then internationally, have you got a footprint yet?
So internationally, we're working on an international strategy right now. And again, one of the things that we decided to focus on was, if we tried to be all things to everybody, then I think, you know, and I think this is something you're going to see in the marketplace, is the one thing unique with cannabis is the limit you have on how much you can produce and how fast you can produce that product. So we knew that there was definitely an eye to the international market, and there still is. But we also realized that if we tried to go down that road immediately, then we may have trouble servicing the customer base that we're trying to create here in Canada. The other thing that I think is interesting on the international market is it's really evolving. And Canada is certainly light years ahead of almost all the other markets right now. So I don't think we've missed the boat in any way in the international market. We certainly have a team working on that right now and looking at what markets can we get into. Because there are a lot of them, and they're evolving, and they're certainly all looking to Canada for potential supply, at least in the beginning, because I think ultimately most international markets will want to get the benefit of producing domestically as well.
You bet.
But we certainly have of course, we have a strong eye to what's happening internationally, and every intention of entering that market as well.
Sure. Cashed up as you are, I guess you're ready to execute on opportunities as they come along. Have you looked at the U.S. at all?
I mean, U.S. market, I think, as we all know, is difficult, and certainly, the regulations as they exist, certainly with the TSX and as a Canadian publicly traded company, are very clear. I think it would be irresponsible if we didn't track and know what was going on in the U.S. at all times, which we do, and we keep a very, very close eye on what's happening there. But again, we have to make sure that we stay within the regulations of the exchange and the regulations of what we're dealing with Health Canada. Obviously, a huge market, and it is a very confusing market, though, as well. You have states that have chosen to legalize. You've got a federal policy that is completely opposite to what's happening. So I would say it's an attractive market just because of volume, but at the same time, confusing market, and one that we're certainly watching. But our strategy really right now is let's get a strong foothold within the $7 billion Canadian market. And also continue to look at opportunities elsewhere.
You bet. All right, Jay, we're going to leave it there. We'll come back to you in a quarter's time, see how you're doing. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you very much for having me.
And we're done.